NASCAR racing is not only about the wrecks, loud screeches from risky drifts, and thrills that stunning athletes create on wheels. To make any of this possible, millions of dollars go into owning and managing NASCAR teams. However, no one gets compelled to own a NASCAR team, but some team bosses have just been terrible. And the top of the list is Angela Harkness. When it comes to NASCAR racing and the hefty million-dollar investments and expenses taking place behind the scenes, many NASCAR bosses, over time, have proven that managing a NASCAR team may not be just a Herculean effort, but one that could send you behind bars. NASCAR team bosses don't have to be behind the steering wheel. They never get involved in any of the life-threatening crashes on circuits and don't even need to know how to make a car drift. But they must dish out tens of millions of dollars annually to keep their team's tires kissing NASCAR's tracks. It takes tremendous guts, grit, and good business acumen to do this. And when it comes down to it, sitting behind steering wheels for a lifetime might be way easier than owning and running a NASCAR team for just a week. But then to even begin dreaming of becoming a NASCAR team boss, you'd want to have money stashed in the bank and the willingness to sign off incredibly large checks, as large as $400,000 weekly for every week of NASCAR's 10-month-long season. That's just on the one hand. What's in the other? There's no guarantee that your team will finish tops or even bring in a win, although a good team track record and sponsorship deal might be your best bet at not ending up bankrupt or in cuffs. That said, becoming a NASCAR team boss only crosses the minds of filthy rich, tough, and business-savvy individuals with great people skills up their sleeves. You'd wish every NASCAR team boss had this, but that's not what NASCAR's history has to tell us. NASCAR's had a lot of terrible team bosses, and looking at how horribly they manage their teams would leave you wondering if successfully managing a NASCAR team is an impossible feat. Thankfully, we know it's not, and that's because NASCAR's archives are also filled with the exceptional performances of team bosses who made managing their teams look easy peasy. However, we just can't forget the dents to NASCAR's history pages and the sorry stories of terrible NASCAR team bosses. And of the many bad NASCAR team bosses to have spearheaded the affairs of a NASCAR team, Angela Harkness' name stands out as the worst. Just how did she get here? Well, let's find out. Angela's NASCAR team ownership dates back to 2002. Just after she had met and had the love of her life, Gary Jones, ditch his married life and move in with her. She pitched the idea of creating a minority-owned NASCAR team to Gary, and he bought the idea. The duo assembled a team they called the Angela Motorsports, purchased cars from Robert Yates Racing, and took along some of NASCAR's expert hands at the time. The group consisted of the top-performing driver Mike McLaurin, Clyde McLeod as general manager, and Harold Harley as crew chief. Angela Motorsports went on to make their debut at the Ford 300 NASCAR Busch Series in 2002, using drivers Kevin LePage and Jay Saunter. Again, they were the fastest during preseason testing the following year when they tested with McLaurin behind the steering wheel, thanks to the amazing talents on the team. That's quite impressive for a start, but as far as Angela was concerned, she was just in this to pull off one of the biggest scams in NASCAR history. Angela and her lover Gary had hatched this quick plan to assemble a NASCAR team, get sponsorship, and quickly make their getaway as NASCAR scam-made millionaires. How were they going to pull this stunt off? Gary D. Jones, Angela's lover and co-owner of the scam NASCAR team they had put together, was the vice president of a Wells Fargo bank branch in his hometown of Austin, Texas. Gary's part was to leverage his position to help the duo embezzle funds from the bank to sponsor putting the team together. With Gary's help, they were able to write fraudulent checks and get outrageous bank loans using their relatives' names. And despite their meager budget, they had succeeded in landing a sponsor for the team, WiredFlyer.com. Gary struck a deal with Rick Barton, CEO of Wired Flyer. He agreed to have Wired Flyer's logo on their car, and in exchange, the company was to help with their travel expenses. The con game had just begun. Angela Motorsports quickly announced McLaurin as their driver in 2003. They put the word out that the team was under full sponsorship and would be well on their feet in 2003. The unfortunate McLaurin was made to believe that his newfound team had signed a deal worth $5 million. To cement things and to keep the scam afloat, Gary proceeded to take a loan out for $250,000 in Angela's mother's name, from which he sent $150,000 to Yates and $100,000 to McLaurin. However, Angela Motorsports had to pay $6 million if they were ever going to remain in the NASCAR racing business. And when the fraudster duo could not bring home the bacon, everything began falling apart. Checks started bouncing soon enough, Employees and suppliers went home empty-handed, and Gary's bank began joining the dots on the scumbag of a branch vice president. The whole scam would come to the fore barely a year later, and the con artist's own team, Angela Motorsports, will be officially closed in January 2004. NASCAR had its horrible bosses, but none were as short-lived and outrightly engineered towards pulling a fast one on NASCAR as this one. But NASCAR's worst boss was not new to con artistry, nor was anything about the fast life unknown to her. And that's because she actually quit stripping to come to build her NASCAR team. And that's something scarier than NASCAR's wildest track scenes. Fast forward to many years before Angela Motorsports, and let's see where all this began. Angela Harkness was born in 1976 to her parents somewhere in Tehran, Iran. Her parents named her Fatima Karim Kahani, and although she's popularly known as Angela Harkness, that really is just the name of her own choosing. There is reportedly no legal backing for her name change. Her father served in the Iranian civil service and army and eventually fled to Germany during the Iranian Revolution in 1979. 16 years later, one of NASCAR's soon-to-be team bosses moved to the United States in 1995 to begin a career as a stripper in California. Angela did not hone her con skills to NASCAR-sized magnitude in one day, so her very first scam attempt was centered on securing her citizenship as a newly relocated immigrant to the States. She tied the knot with Rayford Tyler Jr., her first of 3 failed attempts to become a citizen of the United States. When things didn't turn out as planned with Rayford, she married the then 40-year-old Dion Harkness, even without securing a divorce from her previous husband. Dion was a judge who eventually lost his seat on the bench due to several accusations Angela levied against him on the grounds of domestic violence. The couple later parted, and in November 2000, Angela gave birth to a baby. 1 year down the line, she met her lover while stripping and con artist in 2001. And this is right when the plan to dash into NASCAR and set the record for the worst team boss ever would be hatched. Although the scam boss career of Angela was short-lived, the aftermath of the whole scam project was disastrous. Angela and Gary took to their heels when the scam gap was blown off. McLaurin's promising driving career was dashed to the ground. By the time McLaurin discovered that the team he had signed up for was a scam, all the quality driver positions were already taken up, bringing his career to a halt. He went on to sign with Joe Gibbs Racing as a development driving coach and start his own fabrication business. Many of the investors who pledged their funds were unable to recover their investments, apart from Yates, who was able to take back his equipment. The long arm of the law eventually caught up with the NASCAR charlatan bosses. Gary was put behind bars for attempting to embezzle $1 million from Wells Fargo Bank. He was spotted running a sports grill and was apprehended. On the other hand, Angela signed a plea deal for fraud and promised to testify against Gary. However, before Gary was even sentenced, she made a break for it as soon as she had the chance. Angela was eventually arrested in Dubai in 2005, and her Iranian passport was seized after a long search. NASCAR scam boss was finally captured by the United States Marshals in New York City and had her trial in 2007. She was sentenced to 3.5 years in prison. There have been horrible team bosses in NASCAR's history, but none pulled off such an audacious move. Coming all the way from professional stripping and dashing into owning a team in NASCAR overnight, nothing in NASCAR's history of scumbag team bosses beats the memory of Angela Harkness and her accomplice Gary Jones. With such a scandalous move executed so flawlessly and almost making it to the light of day, the brain behind this, Angela Harkness, is undoubtedly the worst NASCAR team boss ever.